Welcome to another episode of Brainrich podcast. My name is Natasha, and today we have a special guest, and the company is focusing on purifying air, but in a very special way, which we'll find out today in this podcast. I would like to welcome David. And David, I'm super excited because me and my brother, we are familiar with your technologies. We are users, and we're very excited to share our experience with the guest today.
Well, that was a very kind introduction. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Happy to be chatting about this.
David, air quality is something that sometimes we don't really think often about it, but
Right.
it's something that we cannot survive without the chemicals around us. We are suffering an invisible kind of hardship to our health by not having proper air conditions. So I would like to find out your story, how you
Sure.
started the company, kind of what got you into it.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to frame it because air quality is a piece of the puzzle for all of us. Obviously, it's an essential one. For some of us, it's going to be a very dramatic piece of the health journey. And for some of us, it's just going to be preventative. Like you just don't want problems to be cropping up in your home. I had one of those experiences that probably a lot of us have had where you're interacting with the environment, but you don't realize it. I was overseas in Africa for a little while. And every time I went in the room, I would start sneezing and I would sneeze till I bled sometimes. At the time, I just thought, oh, yeah, allergies or something. I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't think I could take control of that situation or address it. Now, looking back, that's probably been 20 years. It could be mold, could have been chemicals, it could have been allergies. So, whatever it was, now I would have tools to address that. But for a lot of us, it's just making the connection of, okay, I feel worse in that situation or at this home. Or for some people, it's going to be like a brain fog or sinus issues. It could be any number of things. A lot of what we talk about is not the big dust that you can kind of see floating in the air. We're talking about things that are too small for the human eye to see. The air quality industry has done a really poor job of basically over-promising and adding a lot of marketing fluff to things. Right now, our focus is homes because our homes are so unnatural. We create these very synthetic environments where we trap contaminants in, whether that's chemicals or something like mold or viruses. And then there's nothing to take care of it. So a lot of times our homes have no natural filtration, no purification, no sanitization. And so you get something like a chemical in the house and you trap it, not completely, but and then you're being exposed to higher concentrations than you would outside. So the outside air is not perfect. And for a lot of us, you might live near a train station or a busy road. And so outside air has its own issues, but in general and statistically, it's significantly cleaner than the indoor air. And so our challenge at HypoAir is how can we introduce the natural processes found outside indoors, and then just educate our clients on the things that they can do to make their indoor space more naturally like that outside, is
I
to
like
overwhelm the body with toxins.
I really like how much studies you have collected, and it's all listed on your website, and people can access when they wanted to,
Yeah, and air quality is
when they request.
complicated because we've done lots of lab studies where we pay a lab to do a study on a specific thing or university studies. But the ones that we tend to favor are actually just the real world case studies. And they're not nearly as controlled, but that's kind of why we like it because it's in this very dynamic environment. And everything from altitude and humidity to ongoing sources of contaminants are going to factor into your results. So you have to deal with all these factors. And there's no silver bullet with air quality. It's something we try to say a lot is air quality is very individualized. Your home is going to have individual issues.
So, mold in homes, what is it about for viewers who is not really familiar yet?
Yeah. Our modern homes are contributing to a very unnatural concentration of mold in our indoor environments. Our homes are almost designed to facilitate mold growth, and especially in a lot of different climates, depending on where you live. If you're in Florida, Texas, some of these places, you're almost guaranteed to have to fight mold. And if you go outside, there's sunlight, there's ionization, there's all kinds of natural predators, is a way to think of it. And I've started to think about mold as kind of like the weed of the house. It's kind of like this plant that's going to take root and then continue to spread. You're going to find mold everywhere, but it's the concentrations that we're finding indoors, and especially of these toxins that can overwhelm the body and then have some pretty severe reactions. But in general, we want to just reintroduce those natural processes. We want to be wise about moisture management. You're going to find mold in basically any home that you're in. It's almost 100% of homes have mold, but it's just how much they have. And there's different types and it gets a little complicated, but It's a topic that we find is really impacting people's lives and pocketbooks because it can get really expensive. What we're trying to do is manage these biological contaminants that want to grow in moisture, in drywall, in the materials in your house, and try to keep those from affecting your health long term.
And how does your technology is different from other air purifier companies? What is so
So we want to study what's happening outside and then find what's practical to reintroduce indoors. And so the typical approach to a lot of mold is just to spend a lot of money on HEPA air purifiers, which is not a bad thing at all. HEPA is a mechanical filter that traps things in the air. It doesn't address something like mold growing in the bathroom or in your HVAC system. So if you have central air, you have an AC system or a heater, and that's blowing out air at a high velocity, basically at your face. And so you can't have this HEPA that's going to trap those particulates before you breathe them. So there's no exact technology that fits to every situation, but depending on your home, whether it's an apartment or a standalone house, we're going to recommend different approaches. In America, central air in homes or even apartments is very, very common. And yet, statistically, it's around 83% of people haven't changed their filter in a reasonable amount of time. And yet they've got like a $5,000 HEPA spread out in their house. And then they've got this giant HVAC system with a dirty filter and potentially mold. So we want to educate people on what you can do to basically leverage the benefits of these HVAC systems. And then we also have units that are going to just plug in the wall like you're kind of more familiar with when it comes to air purification. But
yeah.
then we also have things like nanofiber window screens. So for some of our clients, the only way you cool your house is you open the window, and that's great. But if you live next to a train station or a port, you might have mold outside. So we want to filter as much of that as we can on the way into the house and then vent the rest. So
I
yeah.
love the diversity of your product and the thought process, how you approach from different angles. And I know, I mean, you kind of touched up a little bit on the seasonalities as well and different
Absolutely. Yeah.
situation that could happen. And it's also sometimes people don't realize that they may have issues actually within their home,
Yeah.
that they're feeling something inside. Like
Yeah.
my friend, she just recently started developing those sinuses
Mhm.
issues before. It's like, what is happening?
Right. If you own a home and you're looking at long-term costs and consequences, well, now we're going to go a lot deeper on how do you take care of your attic? What do you do with your crawl space? How can these things affect you long term? Is it good to properly care for that carpet or is it better just to rip it? We try to give people resources on those types of decisions as well, because sometimes the way our homes are made is just not smart when it comes to air quality. If you kick on a bathroom vent and you have no window open, that's creating a suction. That's creating a negative pressure. And that's probably going to be pulling air from somewhere else. But you want to be intentional with if you're pushing air out, where are you pulling air in? Some of the worst situations that we've seen is people are exhausting bad air, but then they don't have air coming in from anywhere. So they're actually pulling air from a crawl space or someone that's very chemical sensitive and your apartment's right next to the laundry room. So you're putting your exhaust vents on a lot to try to get rid of it, but you're also sucking it from the laundry room, kind of through the doors or through the floor. Just kind of getting to understand how those things flow in your house. And so you can make those wiser decisions. And then you can combine that with technologies like ours or other types of the products to get the most benefit.
Let's go to the bathroom example. Majority of people have this vent in the bathroom. When they had steaming shower, they leave the bathroom and they just flip the switch to ventilate the air out.
Sometimes an exhaust fan in a bathroom is not going to be that powerful. So it's not going to be this huge suction, but you do have to be aware that air wants to be kind of at the same level. In my mind, I think about it a lot like water. It behaves a bit like water. If you pull the water out of the bathroom, the water's going to flow into it from somewhere else. It wants to kind of stabilize. So we have clients that live in very, very, very cold environments and very hot environments and everything in between. If you're in a very, very cold environment, you probably can't shower with the door open or crack a window or something. It's probably not practical, but you have to just kind of realize how these things are flowing. For the bathrooms, though, one of the top recommendations we have is just to get a humidity sensor. These cost, $5 to hundreds of dollars, but the $5 one is probably sufficient. What you just want to see is the humidity in that bathroom staying above 60 for a longer period of time. If it is, then it's probably wise to take a few other steps to prevent something like mold from growing, or at least to try to reduce the chances. Because we work with people that are in Australia that have like 98% humidity. It's extreme, off the charts. In those scenarios, you're not going to get rid of that humidity, but you have to manage. There's things that you can do, but what you don't want is surfaces in that bathroom staying damp longer. So you shower, you dry off, and then your towel is still damp the next day or something like that. So that moisture is staying in those surfaces. And that's just basically facilitating a nice home for something like mold to grow. So you don't want to create that nice space for it. So again, if you can manage the moisture, that's the best bet. But that humidity sensor, though, gives you that data at least to say, is moisture a problem in this bathroom? Should you run that vent longer? Should you have a fan that blows on the surfaces? Should you have a dehumidifier to pull moisture out of the air? There's lots of things you can do. Something like our mold guard will install a normal power socket just in the wall, able to purify the air, suppress mold growth. So there's different things you can do, but it starts with kind of understanding, is there a moisture issue here? And sometimes with moisture, it's not so much that you showered and you put moisture in the air, but it's that it's kind of clustered in one spot. And so something like if you have a central air running the blower, the fan, you're going to help spread that out. So you're going to help kind of dry out surfaces, spread it out. You don't want it just all in one spot. And so that's where it's like for some people, like you can't shower with the door open. You've got roommates, you've got whatever. For some people, you can shower with the door open, and that helps spread it out. And so it becomes less of a concentrated moisture issue, but it's more spread out, and it can become not really an issue at all.
Got it. You shared a few great tips. First, if you can, you just leave a little bit of door open for air to you can control the humidity levels. You can just get the basic unit that's inexpensive, and you can at least kind of gauge if there is an issue with the humidity or not.
Mm-hmm.
You can see if there is an issue, you can also address by installing just simple units
Yep.
to either like the humidifier.
Mm-hmm. Yep. About 50% of your air in that first floor is coming from that crawl space underneath. So these other places that you don't see, maybe you don't want to go in there, maybe you want to avoid them, they can absolutely affect our air quality, especially long term. And then when we talk about central air, like HVAC systems, one of the weird things that how we build things is you kind of want a lot of space to work on those types of systems. So a lot of times they'll put them in unfinished extra areas. So they put it in the crawl space or in the attic. But the problem with that is the attic was never finished. They never insulated it. It's just this hot, humid environment. And then that's where the heart of your HVAC system is located. Or it's in your basement that floods or something like that, or even in the garage. And so a lot of times these HVAC systems, kind of the heart of them is located in these extra spaces that have poor air quality. And those extra spaces are often not treated by the HVAC system either. So it's outside of the building envelope. But those systems are never perfectly sealed. And so that air quality in the attic can get into the HVAC system eventually, or in the basement. And then now the HVAC is spreading that throughout the house. So we want to kind of get ahead of those things.
You'll give a free
Yeah. So
consultation. You'll explain what to do.
hypoair.com/consult, or just the
Consult.
contact
Okay.
form and request it. But yeah, hypoair.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we've touched on the mold, we've touched on the modern building construction, the geography and climate and neighbors and stuff. I have very interesting question for those who travel a lot and who stay in the hotels
Sure.
or Airbnb. My brother travels a lot for business. He always brings his portable
Oh,
unit
yeah.
with
Sure.
him and he plugs in. So for us, since we already know your technology and we know the difference, it's like second nature.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So some of the tricks that kind of floating around on Instagram when you check into a room and you have to either run a steaming shower for air to settle down a little bit, or you just cover that vent with the damn towels to just give you at least filtration type of thing. But there's an easier solution. You can just bring a HypoAir portable unit
Sure.
with you and just plug into the wall.
Yeah. So we'll talk about we can talk about hotels, and then we can talk about Airbnbs. With a hotel, like our favorite tip to start is just to ask the hotel if they have any options for people with sensitivities. Because our technology is installed in some hotels, but they don't do it for every room. And we've never been able to convince any hotel on earth to do it for every room. And so what they see it as is we're only going to invest in this for people that are going to give us a problem otherwise. And so people that are going to walk into a hotel room and say, hey, this smells like mold or VOCs. I can't stay here. And so then they move them over to these other rooms where they maybe have hardwood floors, they have different bedding, they use different cleaning products. Maybe they've got like a HEPA air purifier, maybe they got technologies like ours installed, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And so they may or may not charge you anything extra even to stay in those rooms. And if they have no idea what you're talking about, maybe choose a different hotel. So, but you don't always have the option. So that's the first tip. Just ask. Sometimes they have other things that they'll give you. Second one would be you may ask them to change the filter in your HVAC system,
Yeah.
but it might be better to change the actual filter. And then the next thing would be something like an Air Angel. And we can talk about the technologies in that, but plug it in, go out to dinner, give it a chance to work, because a hotel room's going to have all the issues that you have at home, plus some, obviously. Most hotel rooms are going to have carpet that's cleaned irregularly, cleaned with heavy chemicals. The highest VOCs we've ever measured anywhere is a hotel room after cleaning. And so you've got the chemicals, you've got potentially biological contaminants, mold, bacteria, viruses, and then particulates as well. And so giving the unit a chance to work is going to be best. For some hotels, it's going to be opening windows. If it's a hotel by the ocean, that probably means you've got pretty good air quality outside. It probably also means there's a mold issue because people leave their windows open. There's a lot of moisture, it gets in the carpet. But sometimes just venting that hotel room as much as you can, if you have the option, can go a long ways. But all you're trying to do is cut concentration of exposure while you're there. You're not trying to solve the issues of that hotel
Yeah.
or in a good way. And so you can even see sometimes like kind of black on the vents. And so you want to just mitigate your exposure. So yeah, something like an Air Angel is what we'd recommend. That's kind of the second size up from our mold guard. The Air Angel also has a technology. So it's got polarization, which both of those units have, but it also has an APCO. And the APCO technology is very effective against chemicals. And so at home, a lot of times that's less important. At home, you can make decisions about what types of products you use, what types of paints you use, how you cook, perfumes, detergents, all that kind of stuff. A hotel room, you don't get to make those choices. And so the Air Angel has that technology that's very effective against those chemicals.
Awesome. Those are great tips
Yep.
for those who travel.
Yeah. And then, and then Airbnbs. So Airbnbs are really tricky, but what we say is that, you want to just focus on the bedroom, really. You're not going to solve the air quality in an entire home, like on your vacation for a weekend or something like that. So focus on the bedroom, try to vent the house as much as you can if you have that option. But probably the most practical thing is something like an Air Angel in the bedroom, and then try to vent the house as much as you can with fresh air. Hopefully the home doesn't have issues. Some Airbnbs may have extreme issues. So you just don't really know what you're going to get into until you're there. But you just want to protect that bedroom as much as you can. And then probably just more airflow, more venting is going to be your best bet for a short-term stay.
Thank you so much, David. That was very informative. A lot of good actionable tips. Once again, it's hypoair.com. You can look on the website and request the studies and look at all the technology behind it and all the different products that they have. Reach out for consultation. And we hope you enjoyed this podcast.
Thanks for making it to the end.
Thank you.